Grass does not grow under Bishop Ed.
He's a guy that brings good, practical experience to the table.
He has an incredible way of bringing tensions to the center.
He knows BS when he sees it.
He doesn't lose his cool, for one thing.
There's a method to everything he does.
He knows to do the right thing.
He's lived life kind of at both ends of the spectrum.
He's fully in something, and when he's fully in it, he's fully in it.
He's certainly very decisive and doesn't waste a lot of time.
He has the ability to look at things from the 30,000-foot level, but at the same time does not have the fear of getting into the weeds to understand how everything works.
You challenge him that something can't be done, and that's all he needs.
And he knows to hold people accountable.
He is undoubtedly a man of God.
A lot of people might call him sort of a quiet teddy bear.
They find out that there's a warm, fuzzy person in there, they're really surprised.
He doesn't look for excuses. He doesn't need anybody else to do it for him.
And I think Bishop Ed brought a unifying presence and an ability to think through issues in ways that kind of keep people at the table.
He's just a unique bishop. I mean, you know, how many bishops used to be a vice cop?
He was a get-it-done kind of person, and he was able to do that.
In 2006, there are three things that come to mind. We were looking for someone who would uphold the tradition and faith of the Episcopal Church, someone who could help the church grow in Oklahoma, and someone who had the administrative skills to manage a large and complex diocese like ours.
You know, you may remember that after 2003, we were pretty divided as a church, as the big Episcopal Church.
I think that actually at the time we were looking for a bishop, we did not realize what all we really needed.
Oftentimes when you have new leadership come in, you tend to pivot a little bit, and I think that for the diocese, we were really in need of someone who could come in and understand the administration of the diocese, in addition to the pastoral care.
I listened to his oral interview, and I walked downstairs and said to David, I think I'm listening to the next Bishop of Oklahoma.
Sitting in the Oklahoma City walk-around, once he kind of cast his vision for the diocese, you know, when we read everything on paper to start off with, I was kind of leaning in a different direction.
And then Bishop Ed came up and talked, and it was like a dove descended on the room. That's all I can say.
You know, he just seemed head and shoulders above everyone else in terms of his attention to detail, and that he really wanted to be Bishop of Oklahoma and not just Bishop.
Bishop Ed's ability to bring attention to the diocese has been really pretty incredible. And I think it's just because he's been willing to stand out there and sort of be the champion and cheerleader of Oklahoma.
I don't think any of us really probably totally get what a difference Bishop Ed has made for the Anglican Communion and keeping the Episcopal Church in the Anglican Communion. Everything from helping Bishop Curry in his relationship with the Anglican Communion to his Bishop Ed's relationship with Justin Welby to being on the Anglican Consultative Council. I think he's the kind of person who can make a difference at those meetings that, you know, if they had someone else, they might not be able to do that.
He was elected to Executive Council. He became a member of the Executive Committee of Executive Council. He was appointed co-chair of the Presiding Bishop's Search Committee, which developed a great relationship not only with the Presiding Bishop, but also with the Archbishop of Canterbury. He's been appointed as one of the 3 people from the Episcopal Church, 1 bishop, 1 lay, 1 clergy, to be on the Anglican Consultative Council, which is just an amazing feat.
He has invested himself relationally in the structures of the church. That has brought folks like Archbishop Justin Welby to Oklahoma to talk about peace. It brought Bishop Curry here to share with us his passion around the evangelism of Jesus and calling us to be faithful disciples where we are in the Jesus movement. Oftentimes when there are complicated matters in the House of Bishops or even international structures, that because the trust that people have placed in Bishop Ed, he's able to make a difference and to speak a voice that people will listen to.
I think his real gift in the House of Bishops has been his ability to work with the entire spectrum of viewpoints within the church.
You know, he had a unique voice, for example, in the gun violence issue, and having had personal experiences on either sides. I mean, that has been a unique voice that Bishop Ed has provided. And with his work most recently with the ACC, bringing those together and coming up with some kind of an agreement.
EYE, coming to Oklahoma, the Gospel of Peace Conference, I mean, all the things that have happened have all been because of the fact that he's championed, and that's because he loves Oklahoma, and he truly believes in the diocese. And so I think you can't spend time with him without realizing how much passion and love he has for Oklahoma.
Oklahoma is known now, and it's known as a great diocese, as a really viable place to be an Episcopalian.
I don't think people recognize he not only has the drive and he has a vision, but he also knows how to pull people in to be part of it and to get the right folks on board. And he did that as well in the area of finances. He got the right people on board.
We really didn't have a sound financial footing. We had money in the bank, we had investments, but we had a software system that didn't work. We had a comptroller that kind of did things on an ad hoc basis, and we didn't really have a sound financial footing.
He wasn't afraid to make a decision, and this was a time when we had to make some really difficult decisions that were probably not popular, and they needed to be made.
He asked me to serve on the finance committee when he came on board, and I've just watched all the problems he's had to deal with.
When I started in 2009, you'll recall the stock market was crashing. So the bishop and I actually sat down and we went through every line of the budget. We took almost $2 million and removed it from the budget.
He has a tremendous acumen for the finances. He understands investment, he understands budgets, he knows the ins and outs. And as a result, he's able to really kind of look at numbers and figure out ways of getting things done.
The balance sheet was in very, very bad shape. Every audit that was done of the diocese had a phrase that basically said that the balance sheet was fictitious. And the bishop wanted that statement gone. That conditional phrase isn't a good one to have in your audit. We now have, from 2011 forward, all of them have that condition removed.
When I came to this diocese, our mutual ministry support was 22%. And in the Diocese of Chicago, our church was paying 13%.
And it was based on like 2 years prior. So you could be having a bad year.
He had a goal when he started that the mutual ministry support, which was at 21.5%, he wanted it at 15.
The first time it was reduced, that really had a positive impact on all the congregations.
It's currently at 16%, so from 21.5 to 16, it's almost a 30% reduction.
That's 5 percentage points of income that stays in the congregation and can do local work, and so that's really important, and I think we've all appreciated that.
We also have a rather large endowment that had not been properly managed and invested. So early in his tenure here, we went out and looked for new investment advisors and have done a great job and radically improved the investment performance of our portfolio.
The diocese has had people donate their oil and gas rights to us. That was not being well managed for a long, long time. So Bishop got a hold of several people who energy is their line of work. They reviewed everything, and we probably make 3 or 4 times as much money now in the area of oil and gas than we did before.
You know, you have a turnkey house. When you know, realtors talk about this, we kind of have a turnkey diocese. The new bishop's not going to have to come in and fix a lot of stuff because things have been fixed already.
Bishop Ed, from very early on, made it very clear that he wanted to be involved in all facets of the diocesan life and participate. And a big one was making sure that he was involved in Ardmore Village and St. Simeon's and Cassidy and Holland Hall. Those were all huge priorities. And so he said the first thing he needed to do was start showing up.
We now had a bishop who attended every single board meeting, and quite frankly in the beginning was able to attend most of our committee meetings. And so he was very engaged, very in tune with the whole what's happening in education, and particularly what's happening with Episcopalian education.
I think he did it in a way that was not intrusive, but I think he did it in a way where he provided very effective leadership from the diocese standpoint.
When we have a board meeting, he's there and he's present and he's prepared and he's engaged. And if we need something from him as follow-up, you know, he follows up and he does it, and he's just part of it. You know, he's there.
Part of the mission of the diocese is to reach out to people, and we have these diocesan institutions that had existed for years, and the bishop had always been an executive member of the board, if not the president of the board. Bishop Ed took it upon his responsibility to fill that role and not only be present, but to be active and to lead.
And I really give enormous credit to Bishop Ed for putting us in what I believe now is arguably the healthiest relationship that the school has had with the bishop in a long time, if not ever.
I think that he's ahead of his time, really, or in relation to having something like the Iona program where we're educating our own people to stay here.
And so the Diocese of Oklahoma was the first diocese to send our folks for bivocational priesthood and diaconal formation to Texas, to their school, while we developed the Iona initiative. And so Diocese of Oklahoma was the first diocese to be able to have its own school out of the Iona model for bivocational priests and deacons. And so we graduated the first class outside of Texas. And so Oklahoma was the first diocese, and now there's 22.
A lot of dioceses don't have anything like that. A lot of dioceses aren't even looking at bivocational priests yet, and they're going to need to do that.
With there being such a need for priests, not only in our diocese, but across the country, and to be able to fill those needs, especially in rural areas that can't afford, and small churches that really probably don't need a full-time priest and sure can't pay for one. That was just such a stroke, I think, of genius to implement that.
The first time he sort of looked at St. Crispin's and appreciated what it was, he could see what it could become.
Back in 2009, we became aware of some financial irregularities out at St. Crispin's.
He had to make a change in leadership there, and we discovered some issues that were not readily apparent that he dealt with.
All their finances came into the diocesan office, and so we've been managing them for a number of years.
I think the biggest challenge before Bishop Ed came and started investing time and energy and love into St. Crispin's was that, especially during the summertime, the conference center had to shut down so camp could happen. But now, with the new facilities, we can do both. And we can invest time and have a dedicated place for our camp and for the youth of our diocese and people from outside the diocese to experience the wonderful St. Crispin's summer camp community, but then also still have people come in. And so it helps. not just financially, but it also, I think helps spiritually, that we can expand the reach of what we can offer out there.
The thing I appreciate the most about his love for the youth is a recognition that really, if we don't develop character in the youth, then future generations are at risk. I think the work he's done at St. Crispin's to really bring youth back to the Episcopal faith and to the diocese has been amazing.
He loves St. Crispin's, and people in this diocese love St. Crispin's. A lot of our young clergy came out of our camping program.
What he's created there is a hub for the diocese.
It's formation of Christian community on the ground level.
Having that secure, stable footing for the future to allow us to do ministry out there, especially for our young people.
To build St. Crispin's up from what was an okay place to one of the premier conference and camp centers in the country today. And when we finish this next building project, it's going to be top notch.
I think it's wonderful that we've named the dining hall after Bishop Ed. It's kind of front and center. Bishop Ed was the driving force to help grow St. Crispin's into what we have become and are becoming, and so it makes perfect sense that the central place where we gather to share in fellowship and to share stories and to share food and nourishment, it makes perfect sense that it be named after Bishop Ed, because we wouldn't have that without his leadership and guidance and passion.
I'll tell you something about Bishop Ed I don't think anybody appreciates. He might not appreciate. He's a much better singer than he gives himself credit for.
Well, for a long time he called me Jeffy, and I don't know what that's about, but I guess if that's what your bishop dubs you, then you just go with it.
One of the really deficient things about Bishop Ed is his love of sweet tea.
If he wasn't 6'4" and he was smaller, he'd be a saint, and I'd put him on my dashboard.
He can be very, kind of hard line. I mean, sometimes the LA cop might come out, maybe, but...
For some reason, he loves me. I'm not entirely sure why.
He is the wind beneath my wings.
I don't think that it's because I had a security background. When I was chief of security at Oklahoma City University, I asked Jose one time if you had to have a cop background to work on the diocesan staff, and that I did have that background as a chief of security, and he said that counts.
I think I was his comic relief, if nothing else.
You're playing golf with the bishop. I didn't know if we were going to be able to have a beer, or somebody told an off-color joke, and he didn't tell it, but he appreciates a good off-color joke as much as the next guy. And
then the last thing I'll tell you that he taught me is to, as a bishop, always make your own plate at a potluck. Otherwise, you get a really big stomach.
Well, I told him when he first became the bishop that I would only bail him out of jail once per year in the middle of the night, and he's only abused that once. No, not really.
Under advice of the council, I will not can answer that question.
There are many things that the Diocese of Oklahoma will remember his episcopacy for.
First, it's obviously going to be the revitalization of St. Crispin's Camp and Conference Center.
I think St. Crispin's.
St. Crispin's.
He's made it a viable operation going forward where we'll be able to continue to send children to camp because we're able to have some kind of income stream beyond just what we pay to go to camp.
His legacy is that he took something that, quite frankly, was headed in a direction that was probably not going to be sustainable for a long time, and really brought that back around to say, listen, what we have is valuable, and we need to make sure that it's valuable not only today, but for generations to come.
I think that he has left already a legacy at St. Simeon's in terms of his contributions and the church's contributions and support there.
Restoring the relationship of mutual benefit. We get so much benefit out of our relationship with the Episcopal Church, and getting that back to where it needed to be.
Well, I think it's definitely going to be international relations and national relations. He has connected with so many bishops and dioceses across the United States, as well as so many other entities and bishops and the Archbishop of Canterbury.
I think also just the reforms that he instituted in our governance structures and navigating the resources that have been faithfully given to us. He has set a chart for us to continue to build upon that and those successes that previous generations gave to us.
Ultimately, I think that he will be known as someone who led by example, someone who wasn't afraid to get his hands dirty no matter what.
We didn't know what we needed, but I don't think we realized what we got either.
Somehow, through prayer and hard work and God's blessing, Oklahoma is a healthy diocese, and we're drawing good people to this place, and I think that's really reflective of Bishop Ed's leadership and vision for us as a diocese here in Oklahoma.